In this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this adorable little bow cake. Hi, it's Karolyn. I'm a professional cake decorator, and on this channel, I share my tips and tricks and ways that I bake and decorate cakes to help you along your journey. So if you'd like to join me, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you can get notified whenever I release a new video. This week, I am making this adorable little bow cake. It's a design that I did a while ago, and I got another request for it, and I wanted to show you how I do that. Now, I just show you how to decorate it, not how to ice the cake. I do have videos on how I bake, fill, ice cakes, and I also refrigerate all of my cakes, so the icing is going to be solid, and I'm not going to mess up the icing as I'm decorating this cake. So I will link all of those videos below. And just a reminder that my birthday cake design blueprint is linked in the description below. So let's get into the video. I'm going to start out by cutting out all the little quatrefoil pieces. I have marshmallow fondant here. I have a video on how I make the marshmallow fondant, and I will link that below. Just getting a little Crisco on the counter. I popped this in the microwave for about 15 seconds to get it warm and pliable. And I'm just kneading it to smooth it out. Now, this pink, I really like this shade of pink. It's actually a mixture of this Sugar Flare Claret and Wilton Rose. Somebody told me it's pronounced claret and claret, so I'm going with claret. But I can link both of these below. It gives it more of a hot pink color when you add the claret. I really like it. So I added just like a couple, I dipped a toothpick in here and wiped it on here, kneaded it together until I got the desired shade that I want. And also, like always, I mixed a little bit of Tylose powder in with the fondant. The Tylose powder is going to help the fondant set hard. If you don't add the Tylose powder, your fondant is going to be soft. It's going to be so annoying when you try to cut it. It's not going to hold its shape. So it needs to be, like, this is stiff. You know, it's holding its shape. It's not too soft. You need it to be a little stiff to work with it. So what I did, I already added Tylose powder to this, so I'm not going to do it. But for something this size, I would sprinkle on maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 of a teaspoon. I'm going to dump this back in here because I already used it. And then once you have that on here, knead it together. And then what you have to do, once it's kneaded together, set it aside. Let it sit and let the Tylose powder start to work, and it's going to start to stiffen the fondant. You can't use it right away because your fondant is still going to be soft, so give it 15 to 20 minutes before you start working with it. And now I'm going to roll this out. I want to get it super thin. This is cornstarch in here. It's not powdered sugar. Powdered sugar is going to make everything sticky, so I always use cornstarch when working with fondant. Sprinkle it on the countertop, and then roll it out super thin. This is such a good core workout. You got to tighten everything up to be able to press it down and roll it out real thin. Just a little side note, if you see that you're getting little bubbles in your fondant as you're rolling them out, this is a needle tool. And what I like to do is lift the fondant up, and you can start to poke the needle tool up underneath the fondant, find the bubble, and then stick it through, and you can pop the bubble underneath. If you pop it underneath, you're not going to create a big hole in the fondant. And it's just an easy way to get rid of the bubbles. Whenever people come to pick up cakes, I just cut the lids off of cake boxes, and I always save the lids for stuff like this. So I'm going to put all the little pieces on this cardboard box. It'll make it easier to transfer. Now, I will find this or something similar to this and link it below. The thing that stinks about these pink plastic ones is that they don't really cut that sharp. So as you press it down, I like to move it and then take your finger and wipe the sides and then press it out. All right. So because I am a little crazy or just a little, like, I like everything to look neat. It's not crazy. It's just attention to detail. I like to take my fingers and just press down all the sides. This can get a little time consuming, but it'll make your piece look a lot neater if you take the time to smooth out the cuts. So Just whenever you smooth it out, trying not to distort the shape, but just running my finger, I'm just pressing down the fondant back down on itself so no like dirty edges or jagged edges are sticking out. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut, I'm thinking 80 to 100 of these. I'm doing this on a 6-inch cake, although I'm not covering the whole thing. That might be a little excessive, but I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing, cut it, smooth it, and cut out a bunch of these. And I also find that as this piece starts getting a little messy, you just wet a paper towel a little bit and wipe off the part that cuts, and then you'll get cleaner cuts again. Just make sure after you wipe it wet, you wipe it dry so it doesn't stick to the fondant. All right, I lost count, but I probably have 75 to 80 of these cut. And little side note, these parts on here are freaking pointy as hell. And it hurts when you put your hand down on there, but anyway. All right, good. Now I'm going to wrap this fondant back up and store it. And I'll just put it in a plastic bag and put it in an airtight container. I can reuse it for the bow. And I'm going to set these aside and we'll do the border. All right, now I am going to roll out some gray. Same thing, I pop this in the microwave for like 15 seconds to make it warm and pliable. And I'm going to just knead that together. This was extra gray that I had in my little fondant box. And it already does have Tylose powder mixed into it as well. So if you're just using fresh fondant, you want to add Tylose powder. A little note about gray. I get the gray color by adding a teeny bit of black to white fondant. Now I noticed that the black kind of has a purple hue to it. And why is hue so hard to say? But anyway, so the gray looked a little purpley. And if you notice that, then you have to look at the color wheel. And in order to cancel out the purple in the gray, you have to add a little bit of the opposite side, the opposite of the color wheel, which is yellow. So what I did to cancel out some of the purple in this color, I added a teeny bit of yellow to the little bit of black, and it canceled out the purple color. Just a little tip there. So I want to roll this out a little wide because I'm going to put a pattern on here. So, you know, long and wide, if you will. So I have this little ribbon cutter, and you just unscrew the end and you can remove all the little pieces and just make it however wide you want it to be. This one has a little nubbin on the inside and nothing on the outside. So there's different thicknesses that you could roll this out to. And I'm just going to put some pieces together. And here's a little trick for you. I have a this is a yardstick that I cut in half, and I can just take 2 little rulers on either side and just run them up and down and just get this back to be straight. I have this stencil. I got this stencil years ago. I have no clue where I got it, but I will find a similar one and link it below. It's called a damask pattern. I think I'm saying that right. So I'm going to lay this down on top. You have to figure out what part you want to be on it, because there's this little loopy part up here, or, you know, just see what part of the pattern that you want on the band and try to make it even. I have some buttercream. This is regular buttercream. You can use royal icing if you want, but I don't like how royal icing cracks. So this is American buttercream. Do you see how it's holding these peaks? So it is a little stiff. This is easiest with a palette knife. And I'm going to get a little bit of buttercream. All right, you have to hold the stencil steady. Make sure it does not move. And I'm going to wipe the buttercream over the stencil. So now, as I'm doing this, I don't want the icing to be too thick on here. So I'm just right now putting it on to get it covered. And then I'm going to go back and scrape off the excess. So that's why I have this little bowl here. I'm going to wipe this off on the bowl. And now I'm going to take the palette knife and start to scrape. Now, you don't want to scrape it all off. You want to make sure that there's still white on the fondant so the pattern's transferring. So if I could see gray, I'm just going to reapply a little bit more icing. All right, now I just got some hot water, so I'm going to dip this in here. Make sure there's not a lot of water on the end. So dip it in and tap it off. So you just want this to be hot. Hold this down and just wipe it, and it's going to smooth out the buttercream on the stencil, so it's just a much smoother look. Good. I'm going to lift it up, so peel from one end. Ah, beautiful. So now what I have to do, I have to rinse this off to get it clean and then completely dry it. So I'm going to rinse it under hot water to get all the icing off. And now you need it to be dry. You can't put it on this fondant when it's wet, so I like to just take a couple paper towels and dab it dry. So there's paper towels underneath and paper towels on top. Sorry, that was a bad angle. I have paper towels underneath to get the bottom side dry and paper towels on top. You don't want to put this back on the fondant when it's wet. And there's icing that came over the edge, and that's okay. We will clean that off in a minute. I want to line this up again. What you need to do is try to match the pattern. I want to make sure it's exactly in the middle and do the same thing. Wiping the icing on and then taking it off and smoothing it out with the hot water on the spatula. Now I need it to be 21 inches long. This is way longer than I need it to be, so I don't have to do the end part here. I just want to scrape off the excess icing that's hanging over the edge. All right, and now I just want to let the icing crust, so I'm going to let it sit here for about 10 minutes, and then I'll put it on the cake. All right, I just took this out of the refrigerator. The icing is solid, so I'm not going to mess it up. What I like to do is wet a paper towel, and I just clean the cake board before I put any decorations on, just because icing gets on the cake board after I ice the cake, and I like to wait until the icing is solid to clean the board off so I don't ruin it. Then I like to find the front of my cake, which is most symmetrical as I look from the front. Going back, I like this the most. And I'm just going to take a little marker and just mark a little line so I know where the front of a cake is. And I can even take a little paintbrush, go to the back, and just make a little notch in the icing so I know where I'm going to start and finish that bottom border. Now I have some piping gel. I always use this container for my piping gel, and the label just started to disintegrate, so I peeled it off. But I use Wilton piping gel that I just refill in this. This was a CK piping gel container, but I like the container. So whatever kind of piping gel you have, and a paintbrush. Now, what I want to do is get a good layer of piping gel around the bottom where the band is going to go. So here is a little piece off of the band so I can see how high it is. And I just want to make sure that I'm painting piping gel all underneath here. So usually I would say not to paint such a thick layer of piping gel. However, the buttercream is still going to be a little soft to the touch, and I don't want to mess it up as I'm pressing the border on here. So I want to make sure there's enough piping gel that it's going to stick. So I am putting it on a little bit thicker right now. You will see what I mean when we put it on. Now before I put the border on, I want to make sure I have a wet paper towel and an X-Acto knife, because I'm going to need to cut it in the back where it meets. Make sure you have the back, not the front of the cake. I'm going to start in the back and grab my border. And you gotta be careful with it. So making sure that the pattern is facing up and it has crusted so I can touch it without ruining it. And I'm gonna put it against the side of the cake and lightly press it on, right? So I'm just getting it to stick to the piping gel. That's why I put so much on. See how I have it draped over my hand so I can easily slide it on here. I'm not pressing hard. I'm just kind of pushing it right onto the piping gel because I don't want to mess up the pattern. This is the trickiest part. I'm not pushing it. I'm just like, look, this gray part here that has no icing on it, so I'm going to push there, right? So you just want to find just a light touch to get it adhered to the cake. And then where it overlaps, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just saw through both pieces all the way down to the board. Lift up this back piece and remove that extra piece of fondant and seal this back together. Now, so it is lightly pressed against here. Once I'm going to stick this back in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes and then the icing will be solid and then I'll really be able to press it against the cake. But as long as it's pretty much adhered, that's good. So can you see why I made the piping gel a little thicker so it could grab onto the fondant? And then before I put it back in the fridge, I'm just going to take a clean paintbrush and scoop off any excess piping gel that I see. Wiping it on a paper towel, just making sure that I'm cleaning this up. All right, sticking this back in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes, and then we will continue. All right, so I actually just popped this in the freezer for like 5 minutes. Oh my gosh, this is perfect. Okay, now I can try to press this against the cake a little more. And the icing on here is pretty solid right now, so I'm not gonna mess it up. Now I went ahead and cut a bunch of these in half. I'm not sure how many I'll need, but what I did, just try to look directly in the middle, and I put the X-Acto knife down on one side, hold the top and the bottom, and just drag it over to cut it in half, okay? Because we're gonna need a lot of halves as well. And again, to do this, I'm gonna use a little bit of piping gel instead of water. I mean, you can use water if you want. I'm just gonna use piping gel. So I'm gonna start at the bottom and start at the back. So I'm going to take a half piece and put it down. So just get a little bit of piping gel in the back, not thick like we did for that bottom layer. And we're going to start in the back because unless the cake gods are on your side, the pattern is not going to match up. So let's see if they're on my side today. And then I'm going to take a full one. And I want to leave a little bit of white in between. Now, when I get them all on here, we're going to mess around with the placement. So piping gel is forgiving for a little bit, so I can still move these pieces around. See how it all comes together? All right, so now I'm getting low and I'm making sure there's an even white border. Right, so I'm still going to move these into place a little bit. So I'm putting the pieces on, starting with the halves at the bottom, and then trying to put the full pieces on so it has an even white border around it. And now look, so when it gets to the top, I'm going to have to cut this little nubbin off at the top. Little nubbin. Okay, so it looks like it's just this top piece has to come off. Good, and then place that back down. Okay, so you're gonna have to mess around and see where your pieces are gonna fit. So now I know that the top row, the bottom row is gonna be these pieces in half, and the top row, I'm just gonna have to cut this whole top part off. Test. And now I'm just getting a little bit of piping gel on the back of each one, right? And All right, so apparently the cake gods are not on my side today. The pattern is going to be a little bit different in the back. So it's just the space, the white spacing will be a little bigger. And that's why we have the back of a cake. Not horrible. I can maneuver the other ones into place to kind of make it not seem as dramatic, right? But there's the pattern on the cake. And I am going to stick this back in the refrigerator, just so the piping gel can really adhere to the cake and these won't move around. And then we will put the bow on. All right, now I want to make the bow, and I don't want to have the bow the same pink as the pattern that's going around the cake. I want to do a lighter pink. I just think it adds a little more visual interest having different shades of the color. So this is the pink that I used, that I cut the pattern out of, and I still have some here. This is mixed with Tylose already, so it's holding its shape. I'm going to make it lighter, so I'm going to add some white, and I actually don't need all of this. Keeping Crisco in my hand so it doesn't stick. Now this white doesn't have any Tylose added, but I'm mixing it with pink, which already does have Tylose added. So I may not need any Tylose. So I'm gonna mix these together. I'm actually gonna start with a little bit of pink to a lot of white and see what color that gets me. All right, since I added so much white and the white didn't have Tylose, this fondant is really soft, so I'm going to add some more Tylose powder to this. The bow is going to be standing upright on top of the cake, so I'm going to add a little more Tylose powder than normal because I want it to dry really hard. So that was about a half teaspoon. And when you add Tylose powder, it's not exact amounts. You just have to eyeball it and then feel how the fondant feels. Good, and I'm going to set this aside for 5 to 10 minutes, let the Tylose start working, and then I'll continue. All right, now the fondant feels so much better. It's smooth and it's holding its shape. So once you add the Tylose, it's important that you give it time to start working before you use the fondant. So it's going to hold its shape. Now, I do bows weird. It's just how I do it. And if you do it a different way, feel free to do it a different way. I'm just showing you what works for me. So I'm going to roll out a large square or rectangle. There you go. That's how thin it is. This is just the weird way that I do bows. So the bow is going to be sitting on top of the cake. I want the bottom part of the bow to be flat and then the top part to have a hook. So first of all, I'm going to cut this in half and then take the bottom half, flip it around and put it on the top half. There is cornstarch on the back of here, so it's not going to stick to the fondant. It's very important that you have Tylose in your fondant or your fondant may stick together when you do this. So see how it's sliding on each other? It's not sticky. And then what I'm going to do, because I have the flat pieces next to each other, I'm going to cut 2 ends off, about 6 inches wide. And then these pieces are going to stick together, so I like to peel the top part off so it's not sticking together from the cuts. And now I have to eyeball it when I do this. So I'm going to start down here, cut up to the top in the middle, and then come back down and try to make it start and end at the same spot. So starting here, go up to the top, and then curve back down and try to keep it on the same angle. This is all done by eyeballing. Now you can see that this slant here is different than this slant, right? Pick it up because this is sealed together at the top from cutting. And then I'm just going to cut in a little bit more on this side. And that's pretty much even. So take the top part off and I'm just going to smooth the top cuts with my hand. Now I have a paintbrush and a little bit of water. And I'm going to get water just on this end. fold it together. And now I'm going to lift up in the middle and then lift the sides up. So it's going down, up, down. All right, and squeeze it together and do the same thing for the other side. So get some water on the end, close it together, and then pinch it up in the middle and then pull it up on the sides. Squeeze it together, and there we have a little bow. What I like to do is take an X-Acto knife and just cut the ends off, and it'll just stick together that much better in the middle. Okay, now I want to keep a piece that is going to wrap around the center, so I'm going to set this aside, and then I'm going to knead all of this together, and I want to cut 2 really long ribbons. So re-rolling it out, and I want to make sure that I want to cut the ribbons about 4 inches thick. So I want to roll this out pretty thick so I can get 2 ribbons out of it. I mean, pretty wide, not thick. It's still going to be, the fondant is going to be thin. And now I want to cut 2 ribbons out. Now I'm just eyeballing it. You can use a ribbon cutter if you want to get them exact, but I'm just eyeballing to make about the same thickness. And again, this fondant is really thin. I'm going to cut straight on the top. And now I have 2 ribbons. And I want to cut little angle cuts on the bottom part. So starting down here and cutting up on an angle. And same thing on this side. Now this is the part where it can get a little tricky, but very important. Like I said, you have to have Tylose mixed in with your fondant. If your fondant is too soft, this is not going to work. So again, I'm going to squeeze the 2 ends up and then fold them down. Okay, and then I'm going to get water in between all the folds to hold this together. Like that. And same thing on the other one. Push down in the middle and then push the sides down. Get water in between all the little folds. Squeeze it together. And there we go. Okay. Now I want to put this bow all together. So I'm going to take a little bit of water on the side that's going to touch the bow and push that together. And same thing on this side. Now I want to lift this up and squeeze the sides in a little bit just so it's not so flat. It gives me a little more room to work with. You'll see what I mean. I don't want it flat here. I want to kind of squeeze the sides in. All right? It makes it a little easier to work with. I hope that made sense. Now for the part that wraps around the middle, what I want to do is just cut a long rectangle. And that looks a little too long, but I'll wrap. So this is about 3.5 to 4 inches long by about 1.25 inches wide. What I'm going to do is fold down the sides. If your fondant is too dry, it's going to crack when you do this. So your fondant has to be just right to be able to do this. All right, so I folded the 2 sides under and just get a little bit of water under it to hold it. Good. And now I'm going to paint the entire back of this with water. Have my X-Acto knife handy. And then I'm going to start right near the top and put it on halfway. Get a little bit of water in the middle where the bows are going to touch. Do the same thing for the other side and press down. And now I'm going to lift this up and wrap it around. This is a little too long, so just cut the top off, and I just want to tuck this part underneath. So lift it up gently and tucking that middle part under. Good, squeezing it down. And there we have our bow, and let's put it on the cake. All right, here's my cake. Just got it out of the refrigerator. The icing is solid. Make sure I have the front of my cake. Here's where I put the little marker so I know this is the front. I have these little select a size paper towels. So what I'm gonna do, rip it in half, fold it in half, fold it in half again, and then from the folded part, roll into a little roll. And then I'm gonna stick that in one side of the bow and do the same thing for the other side. I have piping gel and my little paintbrush, and carefully lift this up, and I want the tails to go down the side, and I want it to stick up like this. There we go. So now I just want to place it in the correct position and just make it look a little flowy, right? If you find that you cut these too long, you can grab some scissors and just cut these a little shorter. To start, I actually want to take these paper towels out first. Use the handle of my paintbrush and kind of open the bow. So I'm pulling this part open so it can sit a little sturdier. So see how this part's flatter here? And I'm just trying to widen this part of the bow so it sits on the cake a little, just so it has more support. You see when you open this, it has more space to cover and it's not just gonna fall over. Now I'm gonna get a little piping gel on my paintbrush, and I'm painting the very bottom of the bow. So I'm just gonna lift this up, get a little piping gel underneath and stick it back down so that way it sticks to the cake. And I'm gonna do the same thing in the middle. Lift it up and get a little piping gel down on the cake and press it back down. All right, now I can see some piping gel sticking out from where I just put it. So wiping off my paintbrush and just try to slowly remove any of that excess piping gel that you can see. And now I just want to get the little tails in formation so I can mess around with this a little bit. If I want to squeeze the sides in, see if it's just flat, it's just kind of boring. You want to give it a little motion, if you will. So I'm going to squeeze the sides in. Piping gel on the back of my paintbrush. I can paint the back of the bow right here, and that way I could start to stick it to the cake, right? So it's just all about moving this and getting it into the correct position. And I'm going to lift this up and get a little get a little piping gel underneath the bow and press it down. So it's a little difficult for me to explain how to do this. You can kind of just see how I'm moving it into the right spot. And again, this is just flat and boring. This has a little movement and a little interest to it, right? So same thing on this side. I'm gonna start messing with it a little bit. Get a little piping gel on underneath. So I'm painting the pink part. And this way I can press it onto the cake. So I like how this has this little wave here, and then just trying to bend the ends in, you know, just giving it some motion so it looks a little more authentic. Now there is a little bit of cornstarch on the back of here, so just getting a dry paintbrush and brushing that off. Okay, now for the paper towels, I'm gonna stick them back in, just so this holds its shape until it dries. So I want to open this a little more. And you can still play with, like I'm pushing this front part forward, right? So I'm trying to get the bow to open to a good shape. Just so it looks, I don't want it to look so perfect and neat. I want it to have some motion and look like it's fabric, right? So just kind of messing around with it a little bit to get it in the right position. So the paper towel is going to help prevent it from collapsing and it's going to help it keep its shape until it dries. I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator, then it's really going to solidify. And now for the final step, I just want to put a ribbon around the bottom. This cake board has 3 cake circles in it. I have a video showing how I make these cake boards, and I can link that below. So whenever I use 3/8 or 3 cake circles, I will use a 3/8 inch wide ribbon. And this one's perfect because it has the light pink and the dark pink in it. So what I'm going to do, just wrap it around until it overlaps just a little bit, and I'm going to cut right here. Now I have these non-toxic disappearing purple glue sticks. What I want to do is I like to press the foil against the side. It just makes it a lot easier to adhere the ribbon when it's flat. So I take the lid against the side and brace it with my other hand, and I'm just pressing the lid against the side. And just get some glue the whole way around. And then get glue all the way down one side of the ribbon. Starting in the back. And I'm going to hold it with this finger and pull it around front. Good. And where it stops here, take my finger and just push this against the side. And same thing, just adhering it to the cake board the whole way around. And then where it overlaps, just get a little more glue here and press it down. And I like to run my finger over it one more time for good measure, just to make sure it's all pressed against the side. And any purple that sticks out or any purple glue that you can see, it's disappearing purple, so the purple will go away and it'll dry clear. And there's your adorable little pink bow pattern cake. I'm going to put this back in the refrigerator overnight, and then I will remove these paper towels before she comes and picks it up in the morning. So here you go. Here is the little bow cake. Dare I say, totes adorbs. I removed the paper towels from the bow just as I took it out of the refrigerator. This has been sitting in the refrigerator overnight, and I'm actually just going to deliver it 3 doors down to my neighbor because she got this for her baby shower. So I will link everything that I used in the description below. And also, if you have any comments or questions, leave them below. And you can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and I have my website. And I will link everything below as well. And if you want to stick around, you can watch these videos next and hit the subscribe button and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.